of the Alamo.
On the first day of the siege, Mexican troops were lined up on the banks of the San Antonio River, across from the Alamo. Santa Anna's cannons slowly battered away at the walls of the fort. It was military state-of-the-art for 1836, from a man who called himself the Napoleon of the West. On February 23rd, as the siege began, Travis wrote the first of several letters that couriers sneaking out of the Alamo would carry. He addressed it to his fellow citizens and compatriots and pledged victory or death. But he also made an urgent plea for reinforcements.
They knew that they could not hold that fort indefinitely. The men of the Alamo did not want to die gloriously. They wanted to live profitably. So the deal was, we will hold this place till the rest of Texas can join us. And you can tell from every letter that Travis writes from the Alamo, every letter is a plea. Okay, guys, they're here now. We really could use your help. Now would be a good time.
Travis wrote his letters to Texas provisional government. He waited for relief, but he never received a reply. The governmental council was 100 miles away. So was the Texian military leader, General Sam Houston. There was wide disagreement on how to defend against the Mexicans, and so nothing was done at all.
Why didn't the Texians go to the assistance of the Alamo? Well, the sad fact is, and this is a part of the Alamo story that's rarely told, the Texian government that would have organized those relief efforts had fallen apart in dissension and discord.
February 25th, day 3. Santa Anna launched an infantry attack against the Alamo's south wall. The Texans, well protected in the fort, easily repulsed the raid, inflicting a number of casualties. And already Crockett proved his value, his magnetic personality inspiring the defenders to fight ferociously. As Travis wrote, the Honorable David Crockett was seen at all points, animating the men to do their duty. However, in the cold calculus of war, the day belonged to the Mexicans.
The attack on the 25th is an advance on the part of Santa Anna. He is on the Texian side of the river, and he controls the Gonzales Road.
Despite Mexican control of the roads, the Tejano patriot Juan Seguin slipped out that night with another dispatch from Travis, again urging other Texas communities to send reinforcements. Seguin's mission kept him away from the Alamo when the final battle took place. However, as the days passed, Alamo couriers faced increasing danger. From his newly won spot on the Texan side of the river, Santa Anna expanded his siege around the Alamo.
What he's going to do is encircle the Alamo. At least he tries to do that. Now, whether he's consciously letting courier traffic in and out in order to bring as many people as he can into the trap, we don't know.
As he strengthened his chokehold on the Alamo, Santa Anna continued his bombardment of its walls. The arcane Napoleonic art of reducing walls into piles of rubble is difficult to imagine in the 21st century, unless you design and build a full-scale fortress wall. This run of stonework approximates the height and thickness of the Alamo walls. It was built in Texas by a modern-day contractor. 30 of these 6-pound cannonballs, close to the size used by Santa Anna at the Alamo, will be fired at the test wall. The cannon is placed a little over 200 yards away, just outside the range of Texan riflemen at the Alamo. Then the test of cannon versus wall gets underway. The first shot hits the lower right corner, lodging more than 1.5 feet inside the wall. Compared to modern explosive shells, a cannonball does little damage. That's why a siege, like that at the Alamo, took so long.
When the projectile hits the wall, you might get some broken rocks and things like that. The whole idea is over weeks, perhaps months, to break a hole in the wall. The problem is the defenders at night, when you can't see them, are filling the wall in again.
If the defenders worked through the night fixing damaged walls, they would need to sleep during the day, when the cannon fires started all over again. For the sleepless Texans, it was a vicious cycle. On March 1st, day 8 of the siege, reinforcements arrived. Under cover of darkness, 32 men sneaked into the Alamo. They came from nearby Gonzales, the town where the war had started with a defiant banner and a cannon shot. The new troops, however few, gave the beleaguered Travis a glimmer of hope.
I think Travis's goal is to gather as many Texians as he can into the Alamo and at the very least, delay the army, if not defeat the army.
Altogether, as many as 100 men made it into the Alamo during the siege, bringing the garrison's strength to 250. In light of the scant reinforcements, on March 3rd, the 10th day of the siege, Travis wrote another of his letters to the outside world. But now, his defiant tone gave way to bitterness.
He says, look, I'm going to stay here, and my men are going to stay here, and we may well die here. And he said, our bones will reproach our countrymen for their neglect.
On day 12 of the siege, March 5th, Santa Anna decided to bring it to an end. He announced a time for the final assault on the Alamo, the next morning at 5 a.m. He met with his officers to lay out the plan. Soldiers were ordered to scale the Alamo walls at any cost. No prisoners were to be taken. All the Alamo defenders must die. And Santa Anna would take his breakfast inside the captured fort. On the afternoon before the final battle, Santa Anna called a halt to the artillery bombardment. For the first time in nearly 2 weeks, the ragged Alamo defenders could finally rest. But even as the Texans drifted off to sleep, Mexican soldiers quietly took their battle positions. In a few hours, both sides would rise to the call of war and fight the epic Alamo battle, making history as well as legend. The long 2-week siege of the Alamo failed to inflict any casualties on the Texans. As many as 250 defenders remained inside when the final battle began quietly at 5 a.m. on March 6, 1836. In the darkness, 1,800 Mexican soldiers waited in their attack positions, just 100 yards from the Alamo walls. The Mexican artillery was silent, and inside the Alamo, weary Texans were having their first undisturbed sleep in nearly 2 weeks. Santa Anna prepared to give the command that would unleash the attack. However, in one of the few failures of Santa Anna's battle plan, an anxious soldier began to shout before the order was given.
Viva Santa Anna! Viva la República!
The shout spread, bugles sounded, and the troops advanced. The noise caused the Mexicans to lose some of the surprise they hoped for. Within the Alamo, Texans awakened to the clamor of war. Travis rallied his men to the walls, and the fierce fighting began. Santa Anna's battle plan called for advancing columns to hit the Alamo on 3 sides. The smallest, 125 men, attacked the south wall. More than 400 soldiers charged in from the east. Nearly 800 attacked the north wall and the northwest corner. Inside the walls, Jim Bowie remained on his sickbed. He was too ill to take part in the fighting at all. Davy Crockett led a group of defenders at the Alamo's south wall, successfully fending off the Mexican attack there. William Travis rushed to the north wall with his slave Joe fighting alongside him. A moment later, Travis was dead. He had been a leader in the movement to fight for Texas independence. Now, his war was over.
It's Joe who sees his master go down with a bullet to the head. But after that, Joe later says that he simply goes and hides and takes no further part in the actual battle itself, since he doesn't really have a stake in it. Regardless of who wins, he's still a slave. Joe simply looks out for himself.
Though Travis was killed early in the battle, the Alamo defenders fought on without their commander. Skilled Texan riflemen mounted the walls, pouring fire on the Mexicans as fast as they could. Cannons loaded with rusty chains, nails, and other scraps pounded the invading columns with deadly effect. And for a time, the attack stalled. But Santa Anna had 400 fresh soldiers in reserve, and he sent them against the north wall. Now the sheer force of numbers overwhelmed the Texans as Mexican troops neared the top.
No military plan survives contact with the enemy. Santa Anna is no different. But his plan must have been somewhat solid, as well as his preparation, because it only takes a half hour once the attack is commenced for the Mexicans to breach the Alamo's defenses.
Those defenses were nothing more than the Alamo's thick walls, which now proved fatal to the Texan riflemen. With the Mexicans on the ground below, the Texans had to stand up to fire their rifles, making them easy targets for enemy muskets. Another problem for the Texans was the sheer size of the Alamo. Its perimeter walls stretched a quarter of a mile. If the defenders were stationed evenly around the compound, there would be only one every 7 feet, a mere 33 on the north wall. But the Mexicans had more than a numerical advantage. The American version of the Alamo story often overlooks the professionalism of Santa Anna's army, perhaps the battle's most important factor.
Texians brought a knife to a gunfight, and the Mexican army has been very active for about the past 18 months. They know what they're doing. It's a tough army to beat.
Soon after the north wall defenses collapsed, the west wall was breached, and Mexican soldiers poured into the Alamo from two sides. The surviving Texans fell back to their second line of defense, the long barracks on the east side of the Alamo. Outside, in the courtyard, Mexican soldiers discovered the Alamo defenders had neglected to disable the fort's artillery. It was a costly error. The invading troops turned the Texans' own cannons back toward the long barracks. What should have been a refuge became a death trap. A few Texans inside the barracks waved white flags of surrender, but other Texans had no intention of surrendering and continued to fire. Taking fire under a white flag, the Mexicans were enraged and rushed inside to finish the job with pistols and bayonets, killing everyone, taking no prisoners. Eventually, they came upon Jim Bowie.
One Mexican account we have that deals with his death says that he was found hiding under a blanket. The Mexicans thought he was hiding. In fact, he was probably too sick to get up from his blanket. And so his death was not so much a death in battle as a simple execution.
Jim Bowie died from several gunshots to the head. He was a man whose bravery and personal magnetism helped rally support to the Texas war movement. But his death was far from glorious. Davy Crockett was said to be among the last to fall, though whether he died fighting or was executed is a matter still open to question. There was killing outside the Alamo as well. Some 40 to 60 Texans made a dash for safety, but were cut down by Santa Anna's waiting cavalry. By 6:30 a.m., only an hour and a half after Santa Anna's final attack had begun, the battle was over.